Hello, change makers. Oh my goodness, it has been some time since I have been live, and I am really looking forward to connecting with you all this evening. I am actually doing a series leading up to a leadership briefing that we're happening, and so we're going to do governance in real time. And so this is a daily micro training series leading up to the Govern Audaciously, how to protect, prepare, and position your nonprofit for 2026. If you're new to me, I am Nkoyo F. Young Lewis, strategist, attorney, and the creator of the Impact Triad Framework. And I help executive directors, board chairs, senior nonprofit leaders, social impact leaders design audacious, future-proofed organizations that can withstand uncertainty. And so for every day for the next 2 weeks, I am going to come live to give you a quick, powerful breakdown of one governance principle your social impact organization, specifically a nonprofit, needs right now. Because 2026 is coming. And if we are really honest, 2025 has been a bear. And I imagine that we will see a bit more of some of that uncertainty and chaos. And the ones that will thrive, that will manage through this, will be the ones that prepare for it today. And so my goal is not to scare you, not to have you feeling fear or apprehension moving into 2026. It's to help you sort of shift your thinking so that you can be agile and ready to meet the moment if and when it comes. So let's get into it. Today, what we are going to talk about is what governance actually means and why it matters now. So again, we're talking about what governance actually means and why it matters now. And you might be thinking, why am I going to listen to you? Like, what do you know? And so I just want to share with you that I spent probably the large part of my professional career in the nonprofit social impact space. I started out in the classroom, quasi-governmental institutions teaching, went on to go work for a large national nonprofit and kind of saw on the ground how things move, sometimes quickly, a lot of times not as quickly as we would like to see. Ultimately made the decision to go to law school and spent a good amount of my legal career representing nonprofit organizations. So I have seen what's going on in the nonprofit space in a lot of different seats. And one of the things that really give me a lot of pleasure is helping organizations that are justice focused, advocacy oriented, really design the future. And part of designing the future is understanding what is now and what tools are available to you to actually do big, bold, courageous things that are going to transform what happens for future generations, that are going to actually allow you to meet the mission. So I took a period of time and stepped away from traditional law practice to actually be able to help organizations better understand how compliance and governance really works together to make sure your organization is not just impactful, but is protected while it is doing the work. So as a lawyer, what I saw is there are a lot of laws, a lot of regulations that impact nonprofit organizations, a lot of our social impact organizations that are often advocating against the status quo. Whether you see yourself as a disruptor in that way or not, a lot of times what you are doing is going against the way things have always been done. And so what I found in working with a lot of nonprofit organizations of varying sizes and stages, whether they were startups or more mature organizations where they had less than $30,000 in their operating budgets, or they were $1 million plus, is that we have a gap when it comes to strong governance and making sure that our boards are strong, that the way that we do things are strong, that we're documenting and really ensuring that we're moving the mission forward in a way that's actually impactful and that doesn't just burn everybody out. And so I stepped out of traditional practice to really sit more in the compliance and governance space. I actually offer fractional compliance officer services and a lot of governance strategy. I work with boards. That's probably one of my favorite things to do. But you can't work on your board without also impacting the organization as a whole. And so one of the things that I want to talk to you about, whether you're an executive director, a board chair, a board member, a funder, or a senior leader, is that we need everybody marching together, one band, one sound. And a lot of times things get messed up when we do not have a clear framework for how we do things. So that brings me to governance, which I think is really exciting. It's about the leadership of your organization as a whole. Governance is often described or defined as the rules, policies, and processes that basically define how your organization moves. And what I love about this, especially when I'm working with my movement organizations, is that we can define a lot of this, right? Laws and regulations give us the floor. They tell us what has to happen. There needs to be an annual meeting at least. You need to have a board, X number of people. You need policies. You need to have fiscal management. It gives us a container to put into place the rules, policies, and processes that we really want to use to govern and move our organization forward. And so what I love to help organizations do is really think intentionally about that and how we build the type of governance that actually allows us to meet the mission, right? Each of you are here, you're part of your organization because something about that mission calls to you. There's something about what you said or what the organization is saying that is going to do that has moved you to sometimes take positions that don't pay as well, to work way more hours and put on multiple hats beyond just what your job description says. If you're a board member, to provide a lot of labor for free, deal with a lot of conflict and messiness with no financial benefit, to actually go out and raise money on behalf of an organization and be its first ambassador. So something about this mission has moved you. And in order for us to have more nonprofit organizations that are meeting their mission and actually doing what they have set out to do, we really have to have a strong level of governance, clarity, accountability, direction that is shared across multiple stakeholders. And so that's one of the reasons why I think governance is such an important piece for us to think about all the time, but especially as we're moving into a more turbulent and chaotic sort of period of time. I know many of you are experiencing the funding pressures. You're feeling some of that political anxiety around, what of your practices fall in line with what this administration has deemed to be appropriate or acceptable. You may be feeling the pinch from your funders wanting you to pivot away from certain activities or language. All of those things are very real right now. And rather than sit in analysis paralysis about what to do or join the 50/11th scenario planning meeting, I want us to actually think about how we create the framework that we address these different challenges. I want us to think differently about how we think about uncertainty and chaos and the opportunity that is available to you when things are less certain. So, kind of went on a tangent there, but I guess the big points that I want you to understand about governance as we're ending 2025 and heading into the wild, wild west of what 2026 is. I don't know if you can tell, but I get excited about the messy middle periods of uncertainty because I do think that there's a lot of opportunity for us to expand, even when everything is telling us to contract and constrain. And some of that comes from being very clear about what it is that we're doing and finding like-minded organizations and people to do that work with. So, because I don't know how long I've already been rambling here, but what I will say is I want to give you a few bullet points about things I want you to take away before we jump into further conversation in December. Like I mentioned, we are having that leadership briefing, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end of this live. But one thing I want you to know, excuse me, is that governance is not bureaucracy. Like, it doesn't have to be that. If it is that, I'm going to be bold enough to say I think you're doing it wrong. Governance is about leadership clarity. It is an opportunity for everybody to be on the same page and for us to design the operating system with a clear vision towards that mission that we are pushing. It is not paperwork. It is more than paperwork, right? Yes, there are pieces of governments. There's our record-keeping requirements, particularly if you are a nonprofit organization. Specifically, I work a lot with 501c3s, 501c4s. There are a lot of record-keeping requirements that are in place. But record-keeping doesn't have to be burdensome. It doesn't have to be a problem. Actually, it can be a strategic tool to help you operate your system better to allow for more accountability and transparency and clarity of process. So it's not bureaucracy, it's clarity. It's not paperwork, it's literally your operating system. And I think that what ends up happening is when organizations have not thought through about how the operations work, how we get to the mission, right? How we do things, not what we do. We will get to that. There'll be decision making around the things that are within our zone of genius and expertise and things that are not, but also just like the how things get made. How do we make decisions? How do we deal with conflict? How do we move when things are uncertain and we don't have all the information, which is the new normal. I was actually just listening to a podcast earlier today while I was making dinner for my family that was talking about how uncertainty is our new normal and we have to get more comfortable with things being uncertain. And I don't know about you, many of us who have been conditioned and trained to know or think that there is certainty or to seek certainty, to seek one exact answer, a right way to do things. And we are actually operating in a world where there isn't necessarily one right way to do things, or the way that we get to the right way to do things has to be values aligned. And so if we're not having those conversations as a board, as senior leadership for a nonprofit, as funders about what's values aligned, we run the risk of being misaligned with people and pulling in the wrong direction, which will absolutely make it harder for us to meet the mission. It will also lead to a lot of struggle and stress because that governance muscle isn't strong. So what happens when your governance isn't clear, when it's not strong, when you have not really thought about the rules, the policies, the procedures and processes that make your organization move? Well, a lot of times what happens is stagnation. Things just don't move forward. Your board might be meeting all the time. You might be on the calls with someone, internally in the organization. You might be doing all the things, but you're actually not seeing the needle move forward, right? That's one of the signs that our operating system, our governance is not strong. The other place where you might see that is in blurred roles, right? How many of you have been on a board or in a nonprofit or on staff at a nonprofit when it was unclear who was doing things and who should be doing things, right? You have board members involved in day-to-day operations and making management level decisions. You've got executive directors who are feeling like their board is not helpful, is not a strategic thought partner. It's not a place that they can go to get insight and direction on where to move forward. You have people stepping over each other's toes all the time. There's perhaps external conflict, internal conflict. There's that conflict that nobody's talking about that's not addressed. We often see this when we don't have a strong governance model because we sometimes don't have a decision-making framework, a conflict management framework, even though decisions and conflict are absolutely par for the course in the work that we're doing. And is, in my opinion, happens a lot more because people are emotionally charged about the work that they're doing. And so without a process to think through that, to work through that, we end up being stagnated, we end up stepping on each other's toes, or things start to fall to one person, right? There's a handful of people on the board who have to handle everything. Often that's like the board chair, maybe the treasurer, who are like involved in every single fire that happens. You have executive directors who feel like they're completely on an island, having to make 1 million decisions a day and run into this decision fatigue that leads to burnout. And so a lot of times when I think you have a lot of turnover on your board, on your staff, it can also be an indicator that we don't have strong governance in place. And without having the systems really working, we are overburdening the people. And everybody has their point. And so we want to make sure that we're avoiding that by being intentional about creating strong governance processes for ourselves. I think it's also incredibly important right now that as we have a lot of political and regulatory turbulence, that we have stronger governance mechanisms. And this might lean into more of the record keeping aspects and making sure that when we're making decisions that we are making them in ways that we can justify in the event that there's any sort of pushback about the things that we are doing. And part of that also is having a strong process for that, right? Sometimes these things are overwhelming because we're trying to do everything and we're doing it ad hoc each time rather than being very clear and very structured about how we approach the work. And again, that goes back to creating strong systems. So as we head into a period of increased scrutiny and political turbulence and regulatory tightening and funder indecision, I won't call it lack of courage, but maybe more less or more risk adverseness in terms of where they are making investments, we have to be more intentional about building governance and figuring out how we do what we do and how we pivot if and when that's necessary. So I've said a lot of things about what governance is and is not, and how you can tell whether your governance is strong. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If you're live, definitely put it in the chat. If you are watching the replay, also put it in the comments. I will be checking and reviewing these and looking at them and engaging. Where does governance feel shaky in your organization right now? Where do you need clarity to be restored as we move into 2026? And if this conversation is hitting home or it's starting to spark little periods or points of, that feels like me. Oh, that sounds like me. I haven't thought about that. I invite you to join me on December 2nd for our leadership briefing. Again, that's Govern Audaciously, how to protect, prepare, and position your nonprofit for 2026. We will be spending that time really thinking about what the risks are that are in front of us and how we can be prepared, how we can position ourselves for sustainable impact without sacrificing culture, capacity, or compliance. This is a free high-impact leadership briefing for executive directors, board chairs, and senior leaders. I don't do fluff. I like to get into it. I want to give you the strategy. I had posted on Threads the other day. I am consistent. I'm here to give you the information. And if you want to go deeper, we can go deeper. But at least at a bare minimum, I want to make sure that you have the knowledge and some of the tools necessary to protect your mission, to protect your people as we move into more uncertain territory. And so this is about strategy. This is about clarity. I believe this will be one of the strongest hours of preparation that you will invest in your leadership for this year. So if you are like, I probably need to think more about this, our team maybe needs to think more about this, I encourage you to click the link. You can go to go.leadaudaciously.com/govern25, register and join. And I cannot wait to see you there. And it's good to get back live. So I can't wait to join you tomorrow to talk a little bit more about some of the warning signs that your organization is not ready for 2026 so that we can get ready, okay? All right, I hope you all have a great evening, and don't forget to go lead audaciously.